Morning, Mike. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you too. I mean, it doesn't get any better, does it? I mean, we've just had the end of the doctors' strike, the latest four-day strike, where routinely more and more cancellations happen. We're now looking at something like over 1 million procedures cancelled as a result of the junior doctors and the consultants' strike. I mean, they're never going to make any headway here, are they?
I don't think the juvenile doctors are, no, nor the older ones. It's really disappointing that is happening, because it looks like it's designed to inflict as much damage to the NHS as possible.
Yes.
And obviously the main point is to absolutely ensure that Rishi Sunak's target of cutting down the waiting list, it won't be achieved. I've said all along that it's clearly politically motivated. I don't think by all the doctors themselves, but I think there's a handful of them who are obviously strongly Labour supporting people who are associated with the BMA. But actually, I think that the BMA as an organisation has joined up with Mick Lynch and the other people who want to undermine the government, and that's why people are suffering and getting on longer and longer waiting lists.
Yes, and what I'm saying, I suppose, is that all of these things conspire to make those waiting lists longer, and conspire to prevent anybody from actually breaking the cycle, because all we now see is the numbers going up and up and up.
Yes, and I think it's pretty rich of people like Wes Streeting to come on the media and say, well, it was wonderful under Labour, you know, the waiting lists were very low and we put all the funds in. Actually, when the last Labour government came in, they didn't inherit a bankrupt country with a financial crisis on its hands that had to be dealt with, and neither did they have a pandemic.
Right. They also had probably about 10 million fewer people living here.
Absolutely, and they didn't have, you know, hundreds of thousands of immigrants pouring into the country illegally. Yeah. So actually, it was a very, very different scenario. And let's not forget also that they wasted billions on an IT system that never actually worked either.
No, exactly right. Yeah, I mean, the Labour Party, as you know, Martin, are very good at reinventing their history and reinventing the past and pretending that something that did happen actually didn't happen. I don't think anybody's got any hope that if they were to become the next government, that the striking workers wouldn't actually strike more. Because historically, and you and I remember it, you know, the unions get even more powerful during times of Labour government because they expect the Labour government to give in to them easier.
Well, definitely. And if you want to see how well a Labour government will run the health system, take a look at Wales.
Yes.
I have absolutely first-hand experience of it with my own mother and father-in-law and the disgraceful treatment they got in Wales. And also we have a relation in Wales, a first cousin of my wife, who has got appalling service from the NHS in Wales, and I can understand why people are queuing up from Wales to come to England. Mike, this is a patchy situation. These waiting lists are not common everywhere. The 92% target isn't being achieved that much, but where I live in South Warwickshire, we're in a pretty decent place. And when you consider it, the hospitals that were performing better are probably also taking some of the overload from the hospitals who are not performing that well. So, they could be in an even better position if they weren't having to bail out anybody else. The other thing about it all is I think that, and I want to just be fair on the point, I think a lot of NHS trusts are pretty good at making sure that those with the most urgent need, either because of their pain level or because of the criticality of their illness, they're pretty good at prioritising who does get in more quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? That you've got a sort of a bottleneck at every stage. You know, if you can get to see a GP, well done, but it will take you a few weeks. If you can get then a referral to get you on to the next stage, then well done. That could be a few more weeks. And then if you get another referral that needs to be done, at the end of the day, unfortunately, you run out of road. And some people, and I say this without any pride at all in our system, have called me and spoken to me that during COVID, because they couldn't see anyone, they've now got cancer which is inoperable.
Yes, and that's absolutely awful. And
It's
COVID, the
unforgivable. It's worse. It's
overreaction.
worse than awful. It's unforgivable for a country that prides itself on having what is described as the greatest healthcare system in the world. It's shameful, actually.
And Mike, I feel for not only for those poor people who have now got maybe terminal cancer as a result of not seeing the right people during lockdown. I feel for their loved ones, their relations, their brothers, sisters, wives, husbands. I mean, it's a really awful position to be in. And of course, the other thing is that this particular report that shows what the waiting list targets, how much they're being missed by. If you take a look at mental health and see the waiting lists there,
Yeah.
it is an absolute nightmare. There's a whole lot of things that are militating against the NHS performing, and I think it's fine for Wes Streeting to talk about. Well, of course, it needs reform. It won't be reformed radically if there was a Labour government. And actually, my big concern, Mike, is that because of the degree to which the NHS is run by politicians, I have this awful sense that it's just going to kind of bumble along.
Yeah. I'm going to leave you with, due to my incredible number of sources, I'm going to leave you with one fact, which is at the moment unpublished, and I'm very pleased to be able to bring it to you for the first time here on my show. According to a survey of hospital doctors, do you know that we now have actually more eligible hospital doctors working than there were in 2013? The number is up by 49%. In 2013, the number was 52,874. It's now 78,742.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So there are actually more doctors in the system now than there were 10 years ago.
Yes, there are. There's a question, of course, about how many of those are actually working full time.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that that's very rarely a stat mentioned by the BMA.
Oh, never. And indeed, the BMA actually at one time wanted to restrict the number of places there were in med schools in the UK for doctors, because they thought if there were too many, it might dilute the quality of the service.
Yes.
And the government of that time actually agreed to that.
I know, extraordinary, isn't it? Too many doctors, eh? Who would have thought that would be bad for the NHS? Now they're saying they want more. Martin, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. We're out of time. Martin Gower, former NHS Trust Chair. We'll talk some more about those doctor numbers because I think it's a very significant thing.